My name's Bruce Alexander. I was born in Edinburgh, grew up in nearby village of Lone Head. I'm an entomologist by training. I look at insects that transmit disease. I own my own company here in the Roslin Biocentre. I spent much of my career in South America. I had a perspective on Scotland through being away from Scotland for, it's nearly over 20 years. I moved down to, after I graduated from university, I moved down to the southeast of England, lived in the London area for 3 years, moved up to Liverpool for a year, then went across to America where I did my PhD, did my research in Colombia. After I graduated, got a job in Colombia, worked there for several years, then went to Brazil, lived in Brazil for 6 years and wound up coming back complete circle in about 11 years ago. So I saw a lot of changes, obviously, in that time. I made occasional visits back in all that time, but I saw a different country when I came back. Some of the changes were good and some of them were not so good. I've lived in other countries that don't have a lot of our advantages or are a lot different from our country here, but they seem to do perfectly well. Obviously, the US isn't one of those examples, but US, what I've liked about the US is the sort of can-do attitude. They don't have this negative attitude that we have here. Countries like, pick out Colombia, particularly. Colombia is a country that most people think, well, that's like a failed state. It's anything but. It's a thriving state. The people are very proud of their country in spite of all the problems, and they're not aggressively nationalistic, but they're proud of their country. So I read a book which came out about that time called The Scottish Enlightenment by Arthur Herman, which is, he was an author, an American author who has absolutely no links to Scotland whatsoever. He's not Scottish background, he's never lived in Scotland, but I found it a fascinating book. It was talking about a period when Scotland was intellectually at the centre of the world after the 1750s. Around about that time, the time of David Hume, Adam Smith, people like that. And I'd never read all this before. I didn't know anything about it. It wasn't something that was taught to us in school. It's not something that people know enough about, how this country really was an intellectual powerhouse. And it could be said, okay, well, that was only after the Union of Parliaments. But then you take another view of that was all that information or that potential was always there, but it was kept down. And once we removed the threat of a neighbour who's constantly invading us and frustrating our efforts at international trade, then we were allowed to blossom. I think it's an overused cliche, but I think we could have another sort of enlightenment when we're independent. For the first time in our history, we are not going to have a hostile neighbour, where England is not going to be threatening us, whatever happens. Some of them might not be very pleased, but England is going to be a friend, and a true friend to us. So that's the first time that's ever happened in our history. I don't think people grasp that. I mean, everybody's a lot more well-travelled. We have the internet. There's no way we're ever going back to being a small, isolated country in the very edge of the known world that we were before the Union of the Parliament. So we've got enormous potential. So I from reading that book, it just made me. It didn't create my nationalism or my desire for independence. That had always been there, but I thought more people should know things like this. Scots people should be aware of this. They don't know anything. They know so little about their own history. It's absolutely shocking, and they're not going to get it on TV either. They're not going to get it from the existing media. It's really quite appalling. I was also appalled. My son, when he came over here, went to school, and they were still having projects on things like the Tudors and Richard the Lionheart and things like that. It's all right knowing about other countries' history, but not at the expense of your own. I think people need to be instilled with some sort of sense of pride and stop thinking we're this sort of lousy country that doesn't really matter. I think we need independence now because we have a government in Westminster that nobody's really voting for. I mean, the Tory government's going to be coming back. Whether it comes back, it's in power for the next 20 years, or whether it changes at the next election, we're going to get a new Labour government. It's going to be the same sort of thing. They're not governments that really have anything to do with Scotland. They're concerned about appeasing a particular group in the southeast of England. We're having that with trying to pander to people who vote for UKIP, for God's sake. I mean, that is absolutely shocking. That's nothing to do with my country. And we can't really complain about it if there's nothing we can do about it. We've got to accept that that's the way that a significant amount of people in the rest of the UK want to go. They're happy with it. They perhaps don't want to stay in the European Union. They perhaps agree with some of the views of UKIP. We shouldn't be staying with these people. We should, if we really are a different, more socially equal country, we should basically be able to do something to be independent. I think it especially needs to handle foreign affairs, because some of the things that I most disagree with in the Westminster Parliament are specifically foreign affairs. I mean, we've heard it all before, the situation with the illegal wars, sending troops all over the place. We shouldn't be doing that. We're not the world's policemen, or we're not the US's. We shouldn't be the US's ally wherever we go. We should basically think about our place, our own place in the world. I think spending money on a replacement for Trident is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, how much money would that release if we just stopped that? And you hear people saying, well, if we were independent and we had no nuclear weapons, the world's a dangerous place. There's North Korea and Iran and all this. I don't think North Korea is going to think, well, the first thing we've got to do is, now Scotland's defenceless, let's take out Glasgow. They're not going to do that. So we've really got to think, we don't need those things. The world has changed. There are lots of people voting now who weren't even alive when the Cold War was on. So we've got to make a change. We should stop living in a post-Cold War world and live in a new type of world. I think that's what we should be concerned about. Don't worry about the real passionate no voters. They want an post-imperial Britain. They want to have a seat in the Security Council, permanent seat in the Security Council. They want nuclear weapons. They want to be seen as a big player in the world. If you want that sort of world, an independent Scotland is not for you. But I think the sort of country I want isn't that sort of country. I want a country that's a fair country. I want a non-nuclear country. I want a country that uses its resources wisely. I'm concerned that there's so much emphasis on oil. As an environmentalist, I'm concerned that we're going on. On one hand, I'm worried about global warming, and on the other hand, I'm saying, well, we've got all this oil, but we've got plenty of other resources as well. We should be making use of that. So I want a country that uses its own resources more efficiently. I want a country that's respected in the world, and Scotland's got a fantastic brand. It's a brand that most countries in the world would kill for. I can't think, there's not many countries that compare to it in that respect. So it'd be a country that's respected and plays a part in the world. It doesn't sort of retreat. It's like a country like Norway. That's a highly respected country, but it hasn't got half the things that we have. I think we could do an awful lot better than we're doing. We've just got to have a bit more belief in ourselves. I don't think most people would know the population of Norway, Finland, New Zealand, places like that. So, New Zealand's not close by, but it's obviously a country that everybody recognises, and it's an important country, an important, respected country. Again, it hasn't got a lot of the resources we've got, but it's a highly, everybody, or most people like New Zealand. So, and they do play a part in the world. So, and a lot of these European countries. If we were independent, we would not be one of the smallest countries in the world. There are an awful lot of countries in the European Union and the world in general that are smaller than us. We have things like, for example, and I'll actually name names, like MP Tavish Scott saying how many aircraft carriers would an independent Scotland have? It would have no aircraft carriers, because we don't need any aircraft carriers. We don't need aircraft carriers, we don't need nuclear weapons, we don't need to project our power worldwide. It'd be ridiculous if we did. 5 million people telling the rest of the world what to do. So, but when you think about it, you think, oh, we're not aircraft carriers. We went from being a country that had ruled a third of the world or whatever it was, and where the map was all coloured red because of the British Empire, to this tiny little. But people have got to think, well, was it actually right that we had that huge empire? I mean, we basically stole everybody else's country. We had no right to it. And although we think, well, we brought such and such to these countries, our legacy isn't completely good. So we left a lot of problems in a lot of those countries. We created Iraq. There's a good example. Iraq was a state created by the United Kingdom. We used poison gas on them as well. We used weapons of mass destruction on Iraq. So it was the United Kingdom. We participated in that. So we have got to recognise, as an independent country, our history is not, oh, well, they made us do it. They didn't make us do it. We had a lot of the things we actively participated in. So we've got to recognise, like any other country, we've got our checkered past as well. They could be the sort of model we should go for. They're fair countries. They're countries where somebody in business doesn't make hundreds of times the salary that his lowest employee does. There, it's a lot more equal. That's what I want, a country that's left of centre. If more people want to be right of centre, that's fair enough. But at the moment, it's just like what we want doesn't really matter. It's what the rest of the UK wants, and we've just got to go along with it. It's interesting, they constantly criticise Alex Salmond, and to be honest, his appearance doesn't help. He could do with a makeover if that sort of thing was so important. But the fact is, he's recognised as a consummate politician. He's recognised as a very clever, able politician. So they can't get at him that way. So what do they do? If he's such a clever politician, he's trying to put one over on us. So that irritates me, that they would do things like that instead of recognising what he's doing and trying to imply that Alex Salmond is independence. This is something that Alex Salmond invented, and we're all sort of following his master plan, and he's leading us into oblivion. If Alex Salmond was implicated in some scandal, or if he had to leave politics tomorrow, it wouldn't change my views on independence. Alex Salmond is the best person we've got just now to lead us to independence, but he's not independent. He's the manager, but he's not some sort of figurehead. He's not some sort of national hero leading us to glory. He's not Chavez. So that bothers me. It really does bother me. You get the constant thing seems to focus on his physical appearance, or the fact that he's obviously devious. He's obviously a crook. He's obviously a bit smarter than the rest of us, and that just. Considering we're currently run by 2 members of the Bullingdon Club and with a third just waiting in the wings to become Prime Minister. It's been suggested that the unionists have control of the traditional media, like the newspapers, television, whereas the independence campaign's stronger in the newer types of media and the internet. So I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know if there've been any studies on that, but I mean that sounds hopeful, considering that most of the people who are going to be living in independent Scotland aren't people who read newspapers anymore, or don't get their news from the BBC News, for example, on TV like I did when I was younger. I rarely watch BBC News. I get my news, and I don't even buy a newspaper very much. I read newspapers online, but I don't even pick up a newspaper that much. I think it's absolute rubbish. I think I'm furious at a certain newspaper that we'll call the Scotsman, just to give it a name, for example, that has negative stories practically every day. I'm absolutely shocked that they always seem to find something. It's inexhaustible. I don't read the Herald very much, but it's pretty much the same thing. Just get the facts out little by little, or just get the facts out in a dispassionate way, present people with the facts. There are going to be certain differences that are absolutely clear differences. In independent Scotland, we're not going to have Trident. Now, that's an awful lot of money it was going to be going on Trident, it's now can be used for other things. The majority of people in Scotland, I believe, want to remain part of the European Union. If we don't vote for independence in 2017, we're going to have a referendum, and there's a good chance that whatever we think, we will just have to go with whatever the rest of the United Kingdom wants, which may well be withdrawal from the European Union, which I think would be a really bad thing. I'm tired of being patronised. I'm tired of being patronised and told that the rest of the UK is subsidising me. If it's subsidising me, which I don't believe it is from the information I have, why is a country with our resources and our advantages such a basket case? I mean, what is going wrong? Why is that? And I think also, if we don't take this chance now, if we do not take this chance to have to vote yes in the independence referendum. We're not going to get a chance again. People like me, I'm never going to get a chance again. It's a very, very important opportunity we should all take. It's something we really need to seize this chance and make a significant change in our lives. So why not?